Living green or sustainably is about more than saving on your electric bill and doing your part to protect natural resources. It is about a safer and healthier life for you and your family without sacrificing style, quality, or budget. This is a movement to provide all of us with clean air to breathe and water to drink, safe, healthy food to eat and places to live, and energy to run the places where we live, learn, play, and work. The Everyday Green Home Podcast helps you get the value of green for you, your family, and your community. Whether it's green homes, green living, or the people who make it happen, join me, Marla Esser Close, to learn how green and sustainability practices and products work for you and our world. Welcome to the Everyday Green Home Podcast. This is Marla, the Green Home Coach, and I am on a trend this whole month of July talking about independence through personal green or personal choices even. And I'm really excited to have Chelsey Simpson with me. She is a local business owner here in the Oklahoma City area, yet they get to do some stuff that is really exciting about all this personal choice and personal community and how that all works back and forth. How are you doing today, Chelsey?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Marla.
Oh, I'm so excited too. I know every time I've come into this store, I'm like, oh my gosh, we have to have you guys on the podcast. So we finally got you here. Yay.
Yeah, thank you.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and about this fabulous place that I love to go called Urban Agrarian, which is your shop, shop store. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, grocery store. We like to think of it as a grocery store. Yeah, I mean, it is a grocery store. It's just not a traditional one. It's not traditional because it is primarily locally sourced. We source almost everything that we sell from Oklahoma. We've expanded that line a little bit to some more national products because of the pandemic, frankly, and because of some customer demand. But for most of our 12-year history, we've been pretty darn near 100% locally sourced. And that's really unusual. We're also small. Both of our stores are about 1,000 square feet each. And so that puts us in a different situation than a lot of groceries. So we try to pack a lot in there, but we are a traditional grocery store. You can come in for your bread, your milk, your eggs, your steaks, your tortilla chips, your snacking needs, and a lot more.
Your everything. And I've noticed one of the things I've really loved is I love smaller stores because I don't want 10 billion choices. It's overwhelmed to me. So when I find a store like Urban Agrarian, and I love Urban Agrarian, by the way, that has things that are more focused on what I want in my home and in our diets, to me, that's just a win-win-win. And then I know that I know some of the people that make some of the products and produce some of the products that are in the store. So that's super exciting because it's like really ties it all together.
I agree. We really try to curate. And I think even beyond thinking about it being local, we like to talk and think about it in terms of being source verified. So if you say you know a few of the people, we know virtually all of the people that make these things by first name. And so I might speak to you about Christina delivering the cheese, and I'm talking about someone I know. And so, the shorthand in our office for all these products is the first name of the people that made or grew them in a lot of cases. So that's a really different experience too. It's a lot more work to do that individual sourcing. That's not how normal grocery stores work. Normal grocery stores really rely on national distributors. And we are serving not only as a grocery store, but a food hub. And that term food hub is describing the fact that we're doing that aggregating and sourcing of these products and the curating, to your point about having great choices without having everything in front of you. We're really curating products for our customers so that you can come in and know this is something that's going to be good and going to be healthy, unless you choose to buy the toffee, that's on you. But even that toffee is locally made, so we can tell you all about it.
And I love those stories that go behind the food. So for instance, one of the products that y'all carry is the grass-fed beef from Bia Farms. So I'm going to give a little shout out to Jane and the whole family there because I know Jane through one of the women's groups here in Oklahoma City from Bia Farms, and she is so proud to talk about the 100-year heritage that they have on their farm. And you see that, and then you understand the added benefits that we're getting from not only supporting their family farm, but also the better food that we're getting from it. And that just all makes so much sense.
Jane is amazing. Jane and Doug and their daughter Cammie actually is the one hands-on running their ranch right now. They're all incredible people who we have loved getting to know, and it's a stellar product. And, speaking of story, one of the things they've told us is about their land in northeastern Oklahoma, sort of north central really. And they have a high mineral content that has promoted great grass grow and just really brings more to the beef and lamb that they sell. But they learned about that because there were large buffalo wallers on their property. And after looking at where the buffalo congregated, it gave them some information about why the cattle might be thriving there.
Oh my God.
Yeah, this is information and knowledge that's been in their family and been passed down, like you said, for generations. So when we built the store, they're close partners with us in a lot of what we've done with that store in Edmond, actually. And we used some of the barnwood from one of their old barns on their property to put in a drop ceiling in the store. So next time you go in, you'll have to look at that. So we're really connected. I'm glad you chose them as a choice, Emily, because their products are great. But there's a lot of them and what they do literally in the store. So that history is very present for us.
So that's so amazing because I haven't looked up when I've been in there, and hopefully I'll be able to come back in before too long, but we'll see.
Yeah, we're closed for the pandemic, is I think we're not closed, but we're closed to walk-in customers. So because those are small stores, we're trying to be really safe. So it's call-in only.
I had not used the call-in feature, and I had not used Urban Agrarian for the part of the pandemic. And we're in July, folks. So we're kind of figuring things out as things have surged again. So to give you some reference for where we are, but we called an order in last week, and that was so easy. When I spoke to the young lady that answered, whose name just eluded me, Shannon, maybe? Is there a Shannon there?
I think there's a Shannon.
Not Shannon. Anyway, whoever I called, she was super helpful. And she's like, okay, we have this and this, and I can recommend this and that if you like this. And so it was like having my own personal shopper. I did have my own personal shopper. And it was so easy. We drove up and called, and it was curbside delivered in just a few moments. And everything was contact-free and beautiful. Yeah. And we love getting out to the farmer's market because it's a way we can get outdoors and we can have something resembling kind of a social life. But over the past few weeks, the farmers market had loosened their rules quite a bit. So we were starting to kind of feel a little uncomfortable as it was getting more crowded. More people were showing up without masks. And so it's really nice that we have a balanced, offerings that we can use to keep our home well stocked. And we're eating very well, by the way.
That's great. Well, I'm so glad you had a good experience. It was important to us to find a good way to stay open. And which grocery stores were never asked to close. So we really opted in to this call-in system as a choice. We were never required to do that, but we felt it was really the best way to keep our customers safe and our employees safe. That's a big issue with a lot of groceries, really frontline workers. And we also wanted to keep supporting the farmers. We buy from, what's the number? I've counted recently, something like 70 local farms and businesses on an ongoing basis. And so when we think about protecting the livelihood of our business, we're thinking about the livelihood of all those businesses as well. For some of them, our purchases are small, and for some of them, it's a significant amount of what they do. And I grew up on a farm. I grew up on a small dairy in Southwest Oklahoma, and that's really how I came to this work. I've been working in local food systems for, really probably like 15 years. Some unimaginable number. It's getting large, but it's been most of my career. And I was just driven to that by seeing my own family and our multi-generational farm, not unlike the Binkendorfs at Bia Farms, struggling. We were really struggling. And I did not plan to go into this work. I went into communications, but I was just drawn to volunteer in this arena in any way I could, and found one avenue and then another, and then had some paying jobs. And this is the first time I've actually worked for a business. I've done food system related work for 2 different national nonprofits and 1 local cooperative here in Oklahoma. So grocery work is really new to me, but new as in over the last several years. It's not what I've spent my career doing, but it's definitely a satisfying place to connect with people, and to bring it back to what I know you do, connect with how people are keeping their homes and their lives, healthy and, focused.
So how have you found that staying in touch with your customers has worked out? I know you guys send out regular emails and social media posts, and has that been a good way to keep in touch with people?
Yeah, we get a lot of response from social media and those emails. For example, lately we've been doing some produce boxes. So this is a curated box, some of the week's best things.
Oh, I need one of those.
Yeah, they're only $20. They've had peaches in them the last few weeks, blueberries frequently. And so they're really appealing. And I've been sending out an email on Fridays, letting folks know what's in the week's produce box. And it's been such a good response that our store staff have started to ask me, hey, can you give us a heads up before you let people know about this week's produce box, because we know they're going to start calling. And so that's great. But we really do miss our customers. We miss the FaceTime. I think that's the really gratifying part of this job, is that we know a lot of people by name and we know their families. So we miss having that weekly chat as they come in to get their milk and eggs.
I think we all crave that even more right now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hey, let's take a quick breather. And when we come back, we're going to dive in a little deeper on what this whole buy local thing really can mean for us and our communities. Be right back. Hey, this is Marla Close, the Green Home Coach, and I am the author of Living Green Effortlessly, Simple Choices for a Better Home. And in this book, besides talking about a bunch of stuff about green and sustainability products and practices you can easily take in your home, I also talk about home maintenance and how important this is to having a home that serves you rather than you serving it. Seasonal home maintenance checklists are a big part of this, and I teamed up with colleague Tina Gleisner from Home Tips for Women to use her maintenance checklist, actually included in the book, starting on page 96. And if you have the book, look them up. But I wanted to give you a brief excerpt from the book to get you excited about why home maintenance checklists, I know that doesn't sound very exciting, but why they are so important. So, maintaining a home is actually a 3-part ongoing process: inspect, maintain, and update. To help you keep track of what you've done and plan to do, make notes on the checklist. First, inspect. If you've only got an hour to spare, pick one exterior side of the house or one room inside to inspect. Note the date you did this on the checklist and flag items needing maintenance or repairs so you can schedule time or make a list for your handyman or handy woman. Second, maintain. Keep your home safe, such as smoke detector batteries. Keep your home energy efficient, like furnace air filters, and prolong the useful life of many home features, like caulking bathroom tile. Write it down when you complete a task. Keeps you from guessing later on. And third, update. Take advantage of improved materials and fixtures. Upgrade to new building codes, and evaluate when it makes more sense to make an improvement rather than repair, such as replacing a bathroom floor rather than repairing the grout. Check out the book or give me a holler and I'll hook you up online to get the maintenance checklist for yourself. If you'd like to have the entire book, please go to livinggreenbook.com for a multitude of ways to purchase it for yourself. Thanks again. This is Marla, the Green Home Coach. Rolling back in, talking about buying local and food in particular with Chelsey of Urban Agrarian, which has 2 stores here in the Oklahoma City area, one that I shop at up closer to our home in Edmond. And you guys are just such an amazing resource for the community. And I'm seeing a lot more of these kinds of small stores and farmers markets popping up across the city. This whole buy local idea is really, I think, becoming part of the fabric of our community. How is this happening? And tell us why this is so important.
Yeah, thanks for saying that about finding Urban Agrarian important. We have been doing this work as a business for more than 12 years now, and we really have seen a lot of changes in that buy local landscape. 10 or 15 years ago, the conversation was really about educating consumers about what buy local meant. And I think a lot of people are familiar with that idea now. I don't find myself having to talk about food miles. That's still obviously a good reason to choose to buy local. But I think now we talk about ideas that are a little more complex and hope that the customers come along with us on those journeys too. So for example, food justice is an idea that we talk about a lot, and, choosing to buy local and ideally to buy pesticide free or organically grown things, not because of what it might bring to your personal health, but what it might bring to the soil health where those items are grown, what safety it might bring to the lives of the farm workers and farmers who are growing it. So I think that as this food movement has shifted, there are a lot of really good complexities that we're all becoming educated on.
I just watched a video called Farmer's Footprint. Dr. Zach, I think Zach Bush is his name, but it was really talking about exactly what you're saying, the farmers and how they've realized that many of them want to have a more holistic experience and how they're interacting with the land and how they're farming the land and using regenerative agricultural processes and techniques, which in the end run gives us a healthier, more nutritious piece of fruit or vegetables. And I don't know that a lot of us continue to think about how connected all this is. And, if we're protecting the farmer and the people working the ground to grow our food, that's helping us as well because it's all connected.
Yeah, there's our public water sources are hugely impacted by what we do in agriculture. Also by what we do in our own lawns. I'm sure you've, talked about that before. We all have our small little segments of the earth that we are able to impact, those of us lucky enough to have lawns, but agriculture is something that happens on a much bigger scale. And so whether that's happening in your backyard or farther away, it could still impact you, but it's surely impacting someone. And so there's some mixed, depending on which science you read, strawberries are either really dangerous if sprayed or there's no human impact if they've been sprayed with a pesticide, conflicting science. And we won't get into who sponsors what science and why, but I think that
we'll just go with science.
We'll just go with science. Some would say that there's not conclusive data that you will be harmed by eating a non-organic strawberry. Some people would say that if there was conclusive data that we would be harmed, I think that they, at some point would be off the market. But it's a lot easier to understand the impact that's going to have on the person that's spraying that chemical and what that runoff does when it makes it into the ground. Our water is it's not a closed loop. It comes from somewhere.
It's a finite amount.
Yeah.
And I don't know that most of us think about that every drop of water that we consume just is part of the water cycle and it comes back eventually. We don't make new water.
Yeah. Yeah. Farming's a dangerous job and it's not always done by the people we think of as the farmers. Increasingly there are a lot of farm workers who are relied on to pick strawberries, for example. We'll just stick with strawberries, but a lot of other fruits and vegetables can't be harvested by a combine like wheat is. This is highly skilled labor. You or I could not go into the field and pick strawberries as well as a lot of the, migrant workers who come through to work on these crops and then head on north to pick the apples and all of these other things. So these are people who, should be far more appreciated in our food system. And I think one way to protect them is to really prioritize how this food is grown.
So you had another case of our frontline workers being so essential, yet almost invisible in the process.
Yes, 100%.
So by us choosing to buy local, we put an emphasis on farms and farmers that are thinking about a lot of these situations and a lot of these cases. And most of the farmers that I've met locally are really working hard to grow the food chemical free. So they're really kind of using regenerative agriculture kinds of processes, I would assume anyway, since that's all related. I know many of the smaller farmers cannot probably afford to get organic certified because that's actually a U.S. Department of Agriculture certification that I've got to imagine takes some time and resources and money to get through. So, while that may be really important if we're buying food from a big vendor, I would think, how do we assess, what we're buying from a local farmer or store and compare it? Because we hear all these labels on the big scale, but that doesn't always happen in the same way on the smaller scale.
For sure. And even on the big scale, I think it's hard to assess what those things really mean. There are giant farms that are cage-free or pastured with their eggs, for example. And really understanding those terms is too complex in some ways for what a lot of consumers, want when they interface with their food. It's really complicated. I mean, local is not synonymous with organic, and I use organic to mean broadly. Like you said, there's certified organic and then just people that are growing organically. So those two things are not synonymous. Urban Agrarian does not exclusively sell organic groceries. We sell source verified local groceries primarily. And the beauty of it though with local is that you can find out the answers to those questions. and you can have a conversation with someone who can tell you more. I think the beauty about Urban Agrarian is that we've done a lot of that legwork for you. So we're very pro farmers market. I believe that, people should frequent farmers markets and support farmers directly. The nice thing about Urban Agrarian is that you don't have to have that conversation necessarily with 20 different people at the market to learn about the tomatoes. We can tell you quite a bit ourselves because we've had a lot of those conversations. So find someone in your community that's curating that information. I think that consumers will find that a lot of these answers about how something is grown or how an animal is raised are complex. So you really kind of have to decide what matters to you as a consumer. Is it important to you? What are your priorities? Is it animal welfare? Is it avoiding certain chemical inputs and prioritizing others? Even the word chemical is tricky because the world is all chemicals. Pesticides are tricky because they're very, more naturally derived safe ones. We sprayed essential oil on our lawn here at my house, and it did wonders with our flea problem. I think that would be very much considered a pesticide. It wasn't good for the fleas, but it wasn't what we would think of as pesticides. So all of these terms are really tricky. And the deeper I've gotten into this, I didn't know these things when I was, 22 and first doing this work. The more questions I've asked, I've realized that, for me, those priority lines often fall around traceability and humane animal treatment. Those are big priorities for me. And, then also just flavor. Sometimes you just need to find out through trial and error who grows the best peach.
And oh my gosh, when we bit into these tomatoes that we got the other day, I don't remember where we bought them, but they were delicious. Well, the heirlooms that we got from Urban Agrarian were exactly that. And I'm sorry, but there's just nothing better than a well-grown piece of fruit or vegetable.
Yeah.
And that flavor just really does come through. And that is important. And I think also with so many of us eating at home much more than we ever had before, I think a lot of us are starting to pay attention.
Yeah.
And really note what we're doing. Yeah, my husband's a great cook. He's never been a big recipe person. And so that's been one of our fun things that we've been doing is exploring cooking from recipes together. And so we really do get a chance to experience that flavor and check out what we buy.
That's great. Yeah, I'm a big believer that this food should be fun. If you reach a point where you're worrying so much about how you're sourcing your food that it feels too complicated or hard or scary, which for a lot of people with food allergies and other issues, they have to be more concerned. And that's certainly something that some people have to think about a lot more. But for most of us, I'm saying to you that it can be complicated to find all the right things, but don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to pay attention to what's fun.
You make it easy.
Yeah. Urban Agrarian makes it easy. And there are other businesses doing this kind of work too. So, I think my advice to consumers is don't get too mired down. If you find that how you're doing your food sourcing is starting to feel too hard, reassess. For example, I have bought food, I think every which way that a person can. I have been a part of online shopping and cooperatives and grocery store aficionado. I've bought from farmers markets frequently, and I've also joined a couple CSAs. And I found that a CSA kind of removed some of the joy for me personally. This is when I was living in New York. And I found that I just really wanted to buy every darn zucchini plant when I wanted to buy all the food that I love the most and not worry about the things that I didn't. And so after a couple of years of that, I felt the CSA was and it is an excellent way to support a small farm. There's probably not a better model for supporting farms than CSAs. Some people love them. I found that it was not as joyful for me as I needed it to be. So I let that be a big barometer. Food is important to me. I think it's important to a lot of people. Let that joy be part of what takes you where you go.
And on that note, let's take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and talk about food, how to find it, and some of the resources that may be available in your community too. Be right back. 5 myths of green homes are 5 things that you probably believe about green homes that may be costing you thousands of dollars. Which myth do you hear the most? Get your copy of 5 Myths at greenhomecoach.com and click on the button for 5 Myths of Green Homes. You can also connect with me on Facebook at Green Home Coach and let me know the green home myth you hear the most. I'll also share tips, favorite products, and resources. Be sure to download your copy of 5 Myths of Green Homes now, and then check back to learn more. So back on with Chelsey, talking about food and buying local and the importance of having this food resource in our communities. Like you said earlier, Chelsey, there's a lot of options now, which is good because we all need something different, right? But one of the things that I love about what you said, and you didn't exactly use this word, but it's the transparency. That allows us to make a better choice.
So transparency, I think that's really key. That's what we focus the most on at Urban Agrarian is having those answers for people about what they're buying,
Right.
and knowing as much as we can know without being the farmers ourselves about how things are grown. I think that's a lot of customers don't have in-depth questions, but some of them do. We've taken the step of trying to catalog feed tags, for example, from the producers that raise eggs and sell to us, because chicken feed is a thing that matters to some number of customers. And because there's a lot of interesting things that go into chicken feed, and some people are really avoiding soy and not wanting that to come through, to be a component of the egg. And so that's just a step that we've taken. And we don't have that depth of information on every single product, tell you not only this is an egg, but here's what the chicken that laid this egg ate. That's a pretty in-depth piece of information, but we do what we can to find out. And sometimes the questions are interesting. Somebody asked me if the molasses was unsulfured. People have questions about what kind of cows produce the milk. The answer in this case is milking shorthorn. There's a lot of stuff to know.
The more we all learn about our food, you think about it, 3 generations ago, many more people were on a farm or near a farm, and they knew where their food came from, what the plants looked like, that there was a butchering process if you were going to eat meat. And none of that is in front of us any longer. We don't have that sense. And
right,
I'm seeing more and more people that are asking those questions and do want to be responsible for their part in that process and that cycle. And so you definitely, I can see where you fit into that process, a store as a resource and providing that information. And on top of it, it's just good food. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mentioned that I grew up on a farm, and I think my biggest motivation for this work really is preserving that farm heritage. And you mentioned that a lot of people used to be a lot closer to the farm in their own lives. Either, more Americans used to live on farms. If we go back 4 or 5 generations, it was a more agricultural society. But we're losing not only that personal connection, but we're losing these family farms. And I think being able to provide that support through our business to provide an additional market to farmers is my biggest motivation. My family has seen this sort of loss as my grandpa passed away. And my community is just full of, the community I grew up in has far fewer farmers. When I was working with the National Young Farmers Coalition, I spoke to a young farmer, and she was only in her 30s. But knowing that farming is a physical job that a lot of people can't do for too many years, she knew that she probably had 30 or so chances to grow a successful wheat crop in her career. She had about 30 tries, maybe 40 if she kept at it for a long time. And that's not really that many times to get something right. She got 1 try a year. She was going to learn a little every time she did it. She was a first generational farmer. She wasn't coming to this having learned from her parents. And so she, as many young farmers do, hope to pass that knowledge on, but we lose that experience when we don't support small farms. So that's a big part of my push and my pitch for why we should be buying local.
So how do people find local in their own communities? I know how to find you guys right here in Oklahoma City, but not everybody may have you around the corner.
Yeah, there aren't that many locally sourced, really truly locally grocery stores. There are a lot of grocery stores that put some focus on local. I'd say look for your small independent businesses.
Yeah.
Certainly look for your farmers markets. There's been an explosion of farmers markets across the country. Some communities are richer in those than others. When I lived in New York, I think there was something like 4 farmers markets within walking distance of my house through the week that I could access. Some of us are luckier than others in that regard. Some of the easy ways that we find everything these days are also good ways to find farms. Google local food in Oklahoma City or Detroit or wherever you happen to be living. Yelp. These are ways that some people are finding us and some people are finding other resources near them. There have certainly been some efforts to create large catalogs of these local food opportunities, in the past. And I tend to not send people there because these things shift so frequently. Even just during the pandemic, I have a friend in New York who has turned her restaurant into a local food hub distributing food. That's not going to turn up on any national directory anytime soon. I have friends that have done something similar here in Oklahoma City and turned a restaurant into a farmer's market. Yeah, it's fantastic. And so particularly right now at this moment in time, there are more places I think to find these projects, and they're going to show up in your community in different ways. If I'd say ask someone, if you're turning up a dead search on Google or Yelp, ask someone ask a local restaurant who has told you that they source local, see how much they can tell you. This might tell you not only about how honest they're being about their sourcing, but hopefully it'll point you towards a good local food source.
That's a great idea. I wouldn't have thought about asking a restaurant that says they source local. That's a really good idea. And I know that, like you said, there's been these restaurants that have needed an outlet during the pandemic. I've even used an online source that repackages food that might other go to waste. And I've used them sometimes now granted, it's still an online deal and it's the delivery, but for people that don't have access to anything local, something like that might be a way to at least be getting food that would otherwise go to waste, or, a different variety of food of what you might find in your grocery store that might be a chain grocery. So
yeah, that's a great idea. Another term that people should just have in their minds is food hub. And Urban Agrarian is also a food hub because we're doing this aggregation. So some terms that you might search for, because getting that exact Google term is so key.
It's a tricky part.
Yeah. So some of those include farmers market, food hub, CSA, locally sourced grocer, cooperative. These are all terms that I would use depending on, exactly what kind of shopping experience I wanted to find some local food in my community.
That's a big help.
And once you find one, it's going to be easier to find others. If you find a farm that has a CSA, but like me, you decide that CSA isn't the most joyful or convenient way for you, and it might be, but you might ask that farm, well, where else can I find your produce? We buy from farms that also have CSAs. In fact, that's what we kind of try to do, is buy on the margins. So we love when farms can sell most of their food direct, because that's usually the most profitable thing for a farm to do. But it takes a lot of that farmer's time to sell individually to you through a CSA and to a restaurant. And so if you find a farm, ask them where else they're selling. They might be selling to a local grocer or food hub or cooperative that you can then also buy from.
You have been chock full of information, Chelsey. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you sharing this with us. And if people are listening or the Oklahoma City area, how do we find you?
Yes, we urbanagrarian.com is going to have information about both of our locations. We're in the Farmers Market District in Oklahoma City, just west of downtown, and we're in downtown Edmond. And we're also on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter. So, whatever your preference. We have a website that we do online food sales. So you can order online, you can call in and order right now during these pandemic times. So there's a lot of different ways to shop, even though our doors are not officially open for walk-in customers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm, getting hungry. I'm hearing my tummy growl, and I'm thinking about those heirloom tomatoes that are sitting in my kitchen. I think that will be part of lunch. But I appreciate your time so very much. And thank you for sharing all your knowledge with our listeners.
Well, thank you for having me. This was really a joy. I love connecting with people that are passionate about this and other aspects of green living. So I hope to speak to you again soon.
Awesome, Chelsey. Well, everybody, have a great green day, and we will catch you next time. Thanks. That wraps this episode of the Everyday Green Home Podcast. Ready to use what you learned? Get the show notes with all the resources mentioned in this episode. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening and for leaving a review. And remember that living a little better and greener is easier than you think.